welcome to this Thirsty Thursday edition of Liquid Lunch on Newsmax TV. I'm John Tobacco. We'll come to you live today as we do every day, Monday to Friday, noon to 2 Eastern, from the Newsmax headquarters, high atop Midtown Manhattan in New York City. As we start off every day, we go downtown to the New York Stock Exchange where the markets are raging. I told you earlier in the week I thought the markets may just meander here on autopilot, with a lot of electronic programs running, and many of the managers out in the Hamptons are celebrating the last couple weeks of summer. But some geopolitical news could spike or hurt the market. And there was some really good, at least perception of good geopolitical news when China said they want to come to the table and they want to resolve these trade talks with a calm attitude. So we know they always need to save face over there in Asia, and they say, hey, basically saying Trump backed off, said he had second thoughts. We're willing to come in with a calm attitude. That makes the markets feel really good going into a holiday weekend. We're up about 300, and as we've seen lately, when the markets are up, Bitcoin sometimes goes against it. People pull some money out of Bitcoin, they go back into the market. Bitcoin down a few hundred and under that 10,000. He left me yesterday. I had to put up with this fill-in, but it's Frank Morano, my managing editor.
I don't know, John. That fill-in got some pretty good reviews from the folks here at Newsmax.
Really?
Yeah.
The folks here meaning who? Our staff?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, she stayed after for a little while. She talked to everybody, gave them some social media tips. So that was good. But I mean,
smart.
You know, every time I look over and it's her, I realize, like, now I got to do double the work. Or I got to do, like, triple the work.
You are probably one of the few people that's ever seen Midge and said, I'm sorry that she's not Frank Morano.
No, well, it's true. I mean, despite, the optics, obviously, there's a difference. And it was Woman Wednesday, so it was nice to have a woman. But, I really need you to as my security blanket.
Well, I'm here.
So you know.
I'm here to provide some security. And speaking of security state officials, we have some breaking news that we're going to break into big time throughout the program regarding this Inspector General's report and James Comey. If you haven't heard about this, I know Brett Winterble, I believe, spoke about it a little bit before we were on air. The Department of Justice will not be prosecuting James Comey. We'll explain why throughout the program. But that doesn't mean James Comey gets to have his halo restored above his head, because they rebuked him in this report in some pretty harsh terms. We'll tell you exactly what they said. That's coming up. But first, there's all sorts of tumult all over Europe, and that's what I'm speaking, frankly, about. Well, I had thought it was pre-recorded, but I guess not. Now, anyway, I will tell you that the Queen of England has given permission to have Boris Johnson, the UK Prime Minister, suspend the Parliament. Now, this is pretty interesting because they're facing a hard Brexit deadline, or a Brexit deadline of October 31st. That's when, as of now, the UK is slated to break away from the rest of the European Union. So now what a lot of folks in the UK have been saying is, wait a minute, we can't just leave and pull it off like a Band-Aid. We've got to have a soft Brexit. We've got to work out some trade deals. We've got to figure out the situation on the border between Ireland and Northern Ireland. So there's a lot of people that want some sort of a deal to go along with Brexit. But here's the problem. Boris Johnson has suspended the Parliament with the Queen's blessing and her permission from now until October 13th. So that means there'll essentially only be 16 days for them to discuss, let alone vote, on a deal for Brexit. Now, Boris Johnson says he needs this suspension to push forward with his domestic legislative agenda, but people are saying that this is just a tactic to get closer to a no-deal Brexit. So a lot of people are calling him a tin pot dictator, and a whole lot worse. We'll see how that's going. Now, in terms of the populist wave that helped deliver Brexit and Donald Trump, Populism is still alive, maybe not alive and well in Italy, but it's still gasping for air at the very least. Let me tell you what happened in Italy. John and I broke down for you in some detail the dissolution of the populist government. You had two populist parties, the League, which is a right-wing party, and the Five Star Movement, which is sort of difficult to quantify. They partnered basically on a Eurosceptic government, anti-establishment, but last week, the League got a little too big for their britches. They said, you know what, look at all these seats we won in the European parliamentary elections. We're going to call for new elections. We're pulling out of this coalition. Mr. Conte, the prime minister and the person that the Five Star Movement put up, we don't want you anymore. And they said we should have new elections. Their hope was to get enough votes for the League so that they could form a government on their own, but that didn't happen because the unthinkable happened just yesterday. Apparently, the Five Star Movement, which is the bastion of everything anti-establishment, has now partnered with the center-left Democratic Party in Italy. Now, you don't get any more establishment in Italy than the center-left Democratic Party. So now you have these two parties that hate one another, the Democrats and the Five Star Movement, coming together to form a new government. Why? Because they hate the League even more. Chances are this alliance is going to be even more tenuous than the one that we just saw, John.
We're seeing the decimation of Europe. Germany is gasping for air. All the countries surrounding them for years now, they lend the money, so they buy products from Germany. Germany's exports are going down, which is terrible. Now we see Italy in some major, major problems. And when I see these guys from Five Star teaming up with the establishment, I think of Fredo.
Really?
Or Et tu Brute. Oh. Because they really, stabbed the populist movement in the back by joining up with these styles. It's like Trump turning around today and saying, "Oh, you know what? I'm gonna become a Democrat, and I'm going to be with Charles Schumer now."
Well, in some ways, it's even more of a radical shift than that, because the Five Star Movement has always been anti-establishment, whereas Trump used to be a Democrat. He used to be a registered Democrat. But speaking of Fredo showed off his interviewing chops last night on CNN, where Fredo Cuomo was interviewing Kayleigh McEnany. John, take a look at this. Maybe you could take a few lessons if interviews don't go exactly as you'd like them to go.
Let's take a look.
Here's Chris Cuomo on CNN.
Kayleigh McEnany, do you believe this president has ever lied to the American people?
No, I don't believe the president has lied. I believe the fake news media. Do you believe the fake news media
right
has
out of my
lied?
head.
Do you believe the fake news media has lied?
Interview's over, Kayleigh. Please,
The
if you
fake news
can't admit
media
that this
lies
president
every day
has
about
lied
this
to the
president.
American people, you will not
The
have credibility
fake
with the
news
audience.
media lies,
You've
and
got
that's
a
why you've
long
lost
way to go,
credibility.
Kayleigh.
Nothing says credibility, John, more than somebody that used the F word 24 times and compared Fredo to the N word.
In front of his family and kids, and the guy, he makes a fool of himself every other day. And that's why they call him Fredo. His father was governor, his brother's governor, and he's over there on the lowest rated cable channel on TV and making a fool of himself in public. Maybe he should stop drinking before he goes on there, or join Liquid Lunch and just be honest about it. Drink during the show.
What do you think of that tactic for ending interviews? Just shouting, interview's over.
Get off my show.
Interview's over.
Yeah, this interview's over.
Maybe we'll try that with Nan Hayworth later.
I want to go back a couple things, Frank, in our show. The other night, Nico and I went down to the Judge Piro's book signing. We showed some photos the other day of my conversations with Donald Jr. and me and Nico with the good judge. But for those of you out there who think we don't have here on Liquid Lunch some big reach, take a look in this picture, and you'll see right behind Judge Judy, Peter Hegseth, Fox and Friends Weekends, Kimberly Guilfoyle, advisor to President Trump's 2020 campaign, and Donald Trump Jr., the son of the 45th President of the United States. Right above their head is Question Tequila.
Wow.
On the backboard there. And if you think all Frank and I do is sit here and drink alcohol and talk politics, no.
No, we'll eat cheese
Afterwards,
once in
we
a
go
while.
out and we work hard for our sponsors. And that's why you see Question being featured by some of the biggest conservatives on the planet these days. Which is
hey,
pretty
look,
big.
Question is I would say, the best tequila I've ever had. I was in a taco place recently, and they had like 40 different types of tequila, and they didn't have Question. I was quite annoyed.
You only can get Question right here through us. They got to email us and ask for it, and it's like a private select group that can actually get it.
It's quite good. I wish it
but
were.
we have plenty here on Liquid Lunch, and plenty of news to report on the Jeffrey Epstein case. You know my theory. It was supported to some extent by Susan Settembrino, former U.S. prosecutor, yesterday. I think Epstein is still alive. I think the Clintons got him out of there. And now, in a continuing exacerbation of my conspiracy theory, the Clintons have now put Jeffrey Epstein on a mission to take down Donald Trump by running against him in the Republican primary under the alias Joe Walsh.
Now, look at that.
Okay.
That is actual photos. That's Jeffrey
Epstein. Those are not doctored. Those are not Photoshopped.
And Joe Walsh. Honestly,
that is Jeffrey Epstein, and now he's been reincarnated as Joe Walsh. And if you, Frank, want to keep telling me that my conspiracy theory that this guy is still alive is so outrageous, take another look at that picture.
John, that is something.
Thank you.
I have to give the devil his due. That is the most compelling evidence to date that Jeffrey Epstein may still be alive.
Correct. And I will keep you posted on my continuing coverage and investigative pieces on Jeffrey Epstein on the lam, and now Jeffrey Epstein, a.k.a. Joe Walsh. And finally, Frank, we laid into CNN there a little bit because that channel stinks. And another channel that stinks to me even worse is MSNBC. And you got Rachel Maddow and you got Lawrence O'Donnell. I call his show The Last Turd because that's all that comes out of him is turd. But for once, they finally admitted what liars they are. Take a look at Larry O'Donnell last night after a couple of martinis.
I should not have said it on air or posted it on Twitter. I was wrong to do so. This afternoon, attorneys for the president sent us a letter asserting the story is false. They also demanded a retraction. Tonight, we are retracting the story.
He made up a whole thing. It was unsourced. Now he admits, okay, I lied. Anyhow, we're getting out of this segment. We're coming back right after this. We're going to mix it up with Richard Roth and John Burnett. And all the time we're growing audience. We have this new big growing audience out in Breezy Point, apparently. A good friend of my favorite foot doctor, Dr. Jeff, his neighbor Joe. Everybody's down there at Irving Point watching. You guys stay tuned. We'll be back right after this.